Hello and welcome to this edition of The Interview on France 24. I'm Andrea Sankey in Paris. Tonight, world-renowned anti-corruption judge EVA JOLY. In the 1990s, she exposed corruption at the highest levels of French business and politics via investigating the Elf Aquitaine case. The state-owned oil firm saw 30 people convicted and senior members of then-French President François Mitterrand's government implicated after Joly revealed billions of euros had been siphoned off to pay for bribes and luxurious lifestyles. Prosecuting the case almost cost her her life, but even while receiving death threats, she persevered, holding to a belief that a true democracy can only survive if that democracy fights corruption. EVA JOLY joins me now to talk about her work, as well as her new book, just published in French, called The Strength We Lack. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start then with your latest work, your book, unfortunately in French only at present. Now, it might surprise some because unlike the books you wrote before this book focuses more on you personally rather than the career that you're so well known for.
Yes.
Why?
Because I think that a lot of people, they talk about me at my place. They talk about my life with my husband as if they knew. So I thought that I was the one to do that. And also because, you know, suicide is very taboo. And I thought, when this happened to me, this terrible thing,
And for those who don't know, your husband committed suicide.
Yes.
After you were divorced.
Yes.
Yes.
And I had a lot of telephone conversations, people saying, you know, my mother, my father, my brother. And I discovered that it was a huge problem and that it is very taboo to talk about it. So I thought also that maybe if I talked about what happened to us, it could make it a little bit easier for somebody else also to talk about it.
Was it almost therapeutic for you to write this book?
Was it also
Almost therapeutic?
Yes,
for you to
you
write
can
this.
say so, yes. It is important to put words on what's happening to you and to tell the story, the whole story. And I also felt that I want to be believed. I want people to believe what I'm saying is true. That when I'm talking about how important it is to fight corruption or how important it is to fight tax havens, I will be more believed if they can believe that I'm saying the truth also about my life.
So if they know you as a person, they trust
Yes.
your work even more.
Kind of, you know, I think that people that are reading this book, they would not buy a book about corruption or tax havens. But looking at my life as a woman during the last century, they can identify and they can understand it better.
Okay. Let's look then at the work you've been doing now for nearly 2 decades as an investigative judge. You've risked your life to expose corruption in business and politics via your work. You've been extremely successful at what you do, but are you satisfied with what's been achieved?
No, I'm not. You know, I think that it is terrible when you carry out the Elf case that has went to a conviction. Everything is public, and that the problem has not been taken seriously in France, and the opinion do not understand why it is serious. And when you see that several of these persons, the main actors, have been punished, but they have not served their sentence, they have not paid their fines, they have not been redressed on their taxes. So you feel that this is not very democratic, that a lot of people, ordinary people, the people that are tired when they get home taking the RER or the metro, they are paying their fines, they are serving their sentences. And I think this is not good for the French democracy.
Who really didn't pay the price? Where did you see the sentences not correspond with the convictions?
I do think that the French elite system do make things smooth, do protect you. Even if you're not in power anymore, people are very friendly to you. They will arrange for you not to pay your taxes or not to go into prison, or they will find that you are more ill than the others, so that you can go out of prison.
Tell us a little more about then how detrimental this kind of corruption really is, the kind of corruption that you exposed, particularly in the Elf Aquitaine case. Who pays the price for it, not just in France, but outside of
No.
France?
I think it is especially dramatic in Africa and especially dramatic in the former French colonies. If you look at Gabon, for instance, they have been a huge producer of oil. They have had no increase in their gross product. They still have a birth death very high, one of the highest in the world. I think it's about 54 children out of 1,000 still dying. And they have not benefited from this wealth at all. And this is very common all over Africa. And what you see is that the leaders, they are very rich. And France are protecting their wealth.
Why do you think, though, the public isn't more outraged by what you expose?
I think it is very complicated. And I think they are a little tired. They do not believe that things can change.
But they can change, you believe?
Sure they can.
How?
I mean, I'm working now with good governance. I have been working with good governance for 5 years. I'm giving courses, we're talking with people, we're trying to build up these institutions all over Africa. And sometimes when I see what's happening in France, I think that they have not the awareness of how important the free medias are in order to prevent corruption and how important an independent judiciary is.
They're not aware. How do you go about making them aware? Because you see their very democracies under threat.
Yes,
because of
I
this
do believe.
apathy and this lack of understanding.
Yes, and also because we in France, we do not have fully respect for the judiciary institution. And I think that is very important, and we have to build on that, because you can see what happens in Italy when you don't. In Italy, I mean, the corruption makes that they are really being buried in their garbage, you say, in Napoli. They don't have water in Sicilia, in spite of the subventions being given by Europe. There is no reason that the world should be like this. And in order to stop it, you need people to have conscience, you need building the public opinion, you need the free media, and you need an independent, well-functioning judiciary.
You talk a lot about Italy and France. And on a Western European scale, are these the two countries that you think see the most corruption in politics and business?
Well, it's very difficult to know, because in England, they did stop the investigation that could have led us to see what British Aerospace paid as bribes in Saudi Arabia. But there, Tony Blair, in December, decided to stop the investigation. And I think that very often in the UK, you don't have investigations. But sure, you don't see the corruption in the countryside.
Do you worry, I mean, in seeing that you don't really feel acceptable measures have been taken to see that this sort of criminality isn't repeated? For example, after the El Fakitan case, not enough has been done to set a precedent to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So do you fear, in a sense, that your investigations have only made white-collar criminals more cautious and smarter about what they do?
Probably they are more cautious now and smarter. But I do think also that it has set an agenda saying that impunity is not totally guaranteed. You could be unfortunate and you could have to answer a case, because that depends on some individuals. You need some judges, some prosecutors, and you never know.
Right. One measure you'd like to see taken, I know, is that all political leaders' bank accounts be kept under international surveillance. How much corruption do you think that would really prevent?
A tremendous amount. If you take some examples, Abacha in the 90s from Nigeria, we have found $4 billion. Marcos, that was $1 billion that we found. Montesinos in Peru, about the same amount. So we know that the head of states in a lot of developing countries, they are amazing. They are building up huge fortunes, very often in Europe. You also had the examples of Dos Santos in Angola, Nguesso in Congo, and this new rule that are written down in the UN Convention Against Corruption means that today France has the duty to help Madagascar, for instance, repatriate the assets that has been stolen from them under the former regimes. Well, I don't think that we are doing it yet, but one day we will have to answer that in front of the international community, because things are changing abroad.
One last question. In a televised appearance here in France, this was just last week actually, you criticized France's new president, Nicolas Sarkozy, for his friendships and his practices. You actually compared him to Silvio Berlusconi at some points. Why?
Well, he is carrying on his shoulder a tremendous hope for new things happening in France, and especially a better democracy. When he was in campaign, he did ask for the protection of Jaurès and Blum, which is very strong images in the French imagination. And so I, like a lot of people, we have a tremendous hope for him. But what is important is not what you're saying, but it's what you're doing. You have an English expression for that, saying that you must walk the talk. And when one of the first things he does is to go and have dinner with Martin Bouygues, who is the owner of TF1, 40% of the market as to television in France. You don't have that in the US. And that some 3 weeks later, he has the second of his personal campaign recruited by Martin Bouygues to head the television. I don't like that, because this is mixing up political interest and the media that shall be independent. And then the rule is, and this is what we use for the judiciary, we say that the justice shall not only be just, it shall also look as it is. And this is important. The people that are taking the error and coming home in the evening and are tired, they should be secure of the fact that the information they are getting is not mixed up with politics. They are too tired to check it themselves. And the question is not to know whether Laurent Solly will interfere. It is that he shall not have the possibility to interfere. You see? This is very important. So I think Berlusconi, he had his own companies. But being the very close friend of people having the company is also a problem. And I think as Sarkozy is carrying this tremendous hope for us, this is not a good action for him. And,
Okay, well, keep your eye on him then for us. Okay, Joly, thank you so much for joining us on this edition of The Interview. And thanks to our audience as well. Bonsoir.